So, what is myasthenia gravis? It is a rare autoimmune disorder affecting roughly 1 in 1 million people each year, and is characterized by progressive muscle weakness, producing symptoms such as drooping eyelids, double vision, and generalized muscle fatigue. So who's at risk to this disease? Although individuals with a family history of MG are more susceptible, anybody is at risk. It is sporadic in onset, affecting primarily women at 20 to 40 years of age, and men 60 years and above. The term myasthenia gravis, or MG for short, is derived from Greek and Latin origins and literally translates to grave muscle weakness. Being an autoimmune disease, simply put, the body begins to attack its own cells. In the case of MG, your body's immune system begins to attack receptors on your skeletal muscle, for example, that of your bicep. But before we learn how MG can affect the body, let's first understand how muscles work. This is your brain, a complex machine like the engine in a car. It allows us to plan and then execute a movement. For example, doing a bicep curl. Firstly, an electrical impulse travels from the brain down nerve cells called neurons. This impulse then travels along neurons until it reaches a region called the neuromuscular junction, or the NMJ for short. Imagine the NMJ is like the mouth of a river, where water flows down the river out into the ocean. Except, at the NMJ, the end of the neuron, known as the axon terminal, interacts with the surface of our skeletal muscle, so in this case, your bicep. And on the surface of our skeletal muscles are receptors, and these receptors detect a stimulus, and this allows us to move our muscles. This receptor is called the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, and it may sound confusing, but simply put, it means that these particular receptors only catch and bind to acetylcholine, which is a substance released by the neuron at the neuromuscular junction. So once acetylcholine is attached to its receptor, it allows small, positively and negatively charged particles to move into and out of the muscle cell, and this allows for us to contract our bicep and cause elbow flexion. For individuals with MG, this process is compromised to the point where people may have difficulty moving their muscles throughout the day. This occurs through a similar response as an allergic reaction. However, the immune system creates markers known as antibodies against the receptors on our skeletal muscle. Like a colonel in the military who stays at base and devises a plan, B cells within our immune system sit back and create antibodies, which can then bind to the acetylcholine receptors on the surface of skeletal muscle. But this isn't what causes damage, so what does? It's actually the binding of the antibodies which stimulates an inflammatory response known as the complement cascade. Think of the complement cascade like a well-devised military assault conducted by the front line of soldiers, where many pro-inflammatory and toxic molecules are produced, in turn causing damage to the acetylcholine receptors. Therefore, damage to or loss of these receptors prevents acetylcholine from binding, and subsequently the muscle is unable to contract, resulting in common symptoms such as drooping of the eyelids, double vision, and progressive muscle weakness throughout the day. It is a common misconception that muscle tissue begins to waste away. This is not the case in the majority of MG sufferers. However, it is possible that markers can be formed for receptors within our skeletal muscle cells. Symptoms and progression of MG are often exaggerated, as these receptors are involved in not only muscle contraction, but also pathways for growth. Additionally, rare occurrences or untreated cases of MG may go on to affect muscles utilised in breathing, such as the diaphragm. This is known as a myasthenia gravis crisis and is severely life-threatening. And this begs the question, is it curable? Myasthenia gravis can by no means be cured completely. However, it can be effectively managed. A popular course of action is to simply increase the amount of acetylcholine available so that more is able to be bound to the receptor and allow for muscle contraction. This is achieved by targeting acetylcholinesterase, which is a substance that destroys acetylcholine at the NMJ. As such, drugs like donepezil breaks down the acetylcholinesterase, ultimately allowing for more acetylcholine to be available to bind to its receptor, and therefore reducing the symptoms of MG.